Hi, let's talk about the English tenses. We're going to look at a very easy way with which you can understand all of the 12 tenses and kind of get the sense of the underlying logic that connects all of them so that hopefully and once and for all, this really difficult part of English grammar can finally be easy to you and you will no longer have problems with them. All right, so let's get started from the very beginning. Everything that we say and everything that we write, all of our communication is a type of description. Literally, every sentence that's longer than one word will be a description of some sort. Now, the descriptions can be divided into two categories, which are very important when we talk about the English tenses. And the first category will be state. And state describes things as they are right now, the being of a thing or a person. For that, we use the verb to be. A second category of descriptions will be action. And if a state describes the thing, the person, then action describes what this person or this thing is doing. Every single thing, like a wallet, is doing something, lying down. I, a person, am speaking. You, a person, are listening. And this is super important because both state and the action will look a little bit different in every tense. So, state, as I said, are variations of the word to be. So, I am, I was, you are, you were, he is, he was, been, as well as to be. And action are all the other verbs in all of their other forms, like to cook or learning, cooked, have eaten. In examples, we have in a state, I am a driver, and in action, I drive a car. In state, she is from Sweden. Action, she comes from Sweden. State is yesterday we were at the cinema, and action is yesterday we watched a film at the cinema. A question in a state will be when will you be in Paris? And a question in action will be when will you visit Paris? This is meaningless state. This has no meaning action. And finally, let's be there at 7 p.m. state, or let's meet there at 7 p.m. So everything we say is either going to be a state or the action. Why is this important? It's important because in the common speech, which probably interests most of the people listening to this, the division between state and action is about 50-50. So you always either are describing state or the action. In podcasts and lectures, the division is about 35% state and 65% action. And in the written language, it's about 25% state and 75% action. So when we talk about tenses, it's super important to know exactly how to describe state and how to describe action in every tense. For the rest of this presentation, we're going to be working with a timeline. Here we have our today, and then really what we're looking at is state and action in the present, state and action in the past, and state and action in the future. And the English language has a solution for that problem. And the solution is the 12 dreaded English tenses. So English language has four variations for the past, four variations for the present, and four variations for the future. I know that sounds like a lot, but actually they're quite easy to understand if you see them in a proper context. So, for example, they divide into the simple tenses: past simple, present simple, future simple, as well as the continuous tenses: past continuous, present continuous, and future continuous. We have the perfect tenses: past perfect, present perfect, and future perfect. Perfect not in a sense that they are ideal, but from the Latin word perfect meaning finished. So they are the finished tenses. Even though the definition of some of them is literally they are unfinished, but we'll get to that later. And finally, the last category is perfect continuous tenses: past perfect continuous, present perfect continuous, and future perfect continuous. So we'll be looking at them one by one, category by category. And we're going to start with the simple. So simple tenses. And the first one is present simple, something that I like to call a presence of facts. And that's because we use present simple to describe things that generally don't change. So, for example, we live on planet Earth, we as people, and this fact will never change. So, all types of facts, all types of things that are repeated, all types of things that happen again and again and again, we'll be using present simple for that. So the temperature of water when it's boiling, somebody's name, the habits that we do, the different routines that we have week after week after week, all of these things will use present simple. In state and action, present simple looks like this. We use the word am, are, and is to describe state, and we use just normal verbs in infinitive for the action. The only caveat is that in the third person, we will add s to the end of the verb. So he eats instead of he eat. In negations, we add not. So are not turns into aren't, and is not turns into isn't. And in action, we take the word do and then we add not to it. So it turns into don't. And in the third form, we take the word does, we add not, doesn't. If we want to make a question, and this is the general rule for all of the tenses, we change the verb with the subject, putting the verb at the very front of the sentence, and it will look like this. Am I, are you, is it? And an example is he unfocused. And in the action, we put do at the beginning. So do you, does he, for example, does he make a mistake? And that's pretty much how present simple works technically. Now, in an example, it will look like this. Here is Monique, and Monique is French. She lives in Paris. We study economics together. I like her car. It's a red Mini Cooper. She lets me borrow it sometimes. Everything I'm describing here are things that don't change, are facts about Monique, about me, about our relationship. And for all of those, I'll be using present simple. They are not situational. They are not happening right now. They are general facts and general knowledge. That's why present simple is the most common tense, and we use it most often in most situations. For this reason, present simple loves words such as every, sometimes, usually, never, tends to, or adding s to the ends of days or months. That's our present simple. Like I said, it's quite simple. To describe the past, we use past simple. And we use it to describe past events. And what's really important is that we know the time that these events took place. That's very, very important. Past simple loves to be connected with a specific time. So in this example, I started my job in June of 2023. I'm telling you exactly when something happened. A lot of English teachers say that we use past simple to describe an action that finished in the past, but that's exactly what they mean. A finished action has a specific time slot in history. And if we're not talking about a specific time slot, about a specific time in past, we'll be using a different tense. Past simple uses the second past form of the verb. So am turns into was, are into were, do into did, eat into ate, see into saw, and so on. In action and state, it looks like this. We use was and were in state, and we use the verbs in the second past form for the action. In negations, was turns into wasn't, were into weren't, and we use the word didn't, which is the past form of did. Now in questions, as always, we change the order. So was I, were you, was he, as in was she unfocused, and we use did at the beginning of the question. Did you, or did he make a mistake? Remember that in present simple we added s to the end of the verbs in the third form. We don't have to do that in past simple. It's just did for everybody. But one more important thing about did is that when we use it in a sentence in past simple, just using did at the beginning of the sentence in a question or in a negation will take away the past tense from all the other verbs. So we could make a question, did you eat my sandwich? I'm not saying did you ate my sandwich, because did already absorbs all of the past form. Same with negation. No, I didn't eat your sandwich. I'm not saying I didn't eat your sandwich. I'm saying I didn't eat your sandwich. The word did absorbs the past. Simple loves words such as last, yesterday, in February, in June, in 2013, 2 days ago, when. because all of these words talk about a specific time in the past. Describe the future. We use future simple. And this really is the simplest of all the tenses. All we have to do is add will, the word will, between a subject and a verb. As in this example, humans will live on Mars. That's it. That's all we have to do. And when do we use it? Literally anytime. A lot of English teachers will say that will is used when the future is uncertain, when the future is far away, when it's probable but not certain. That's not technically true. English speakers use will with everything. They don't have time to think, oh, is this future certain? Is this a 100% plan? No one has time for that. Will is used for everything. Yes, there are other ways to tell the future, like present continuous. We'll look at that. But generally speaking, 95% of the time, we will just use will when we will talk about the future. If you want to take your English to the next level, shorten the will to two letters LL. So instead of I will eat your sandwich, you can say I'll eat your sandwich. If instead of saying you will go with me, you'll go with me. That will take your language to the next level because that's how most people talk. Now, in states, we add be to the will, so will be or will be. I'll be working for Google, for example. And in the action, we just add will. In negation, will turns into want. Really nice word. I love saying it, want. And in the question, as always, we reverse the order. So we start with will in the questions. So will he make a mistake or will she be unfocused? Very, very simple, the future simple tense. Now, future simple loves words such as next, tomorrow, in February, in June, in 2027, in 2 days, when, in 5 months. Any type of word that will describe the future is good to go in future simple. As I said, you will be using it to describe any type of future. And that's our main category, the simple tenses. We have past simple, which we use to describe past events. Time is super important. Present simple, which we use to talk about things that don't change. And future simple, which we just use to talk about general future. So in an example for present simple, states he is a basketball player. Action, he plays basketball. Past simple states he was a basketball player. Action, he played basketball. Future simple state he will be a basketball player. And action, he will play basketball. That's how simple tenses work and look. Now let's move on to the continuous tenses. So continuous tenses, they talk about an action happening now or a longer action in the past or in the future. So present continuous, which I love to talk the present of Zen, because it talks about everything happening right now in this very moment. This is the tense of meditation. So right now I am speaking, you are listening, we are breathing, and every person on the planet is doing something right now. And for those situations happening right now, we are using present continuous. The continuous tenses love to add the ending ing to the verbs, indicating that this verb is continuous. So for a state, we add ing to the verb be. So I am being, you are being. And in the action, we use an extra verb, is, are, or am, and to the actual verb which we want to use, we will add ing to the end. For example, I am talking, you are listening. In negation, we just add not, so is isn't, are is aren't. And in question, again, reversed order, we start from the am, are, is, as in, are they being unfocused? Is he making a mistake? And so on. It's quite easy to use once you get a hang of it. Present continuous loves words that describe the actual moment. So words like now, right now, currently, at the moment, presently, as we speak. Now it's important to note that We don't only use it to talk about things happening right this second when we breathe. We also use it to talk about things that are happening generally in our lives at this moment. So, for example, I am reading a Stephen King's book. I don't have it in my hands right now, but this is something that I'm reading in my life in this moment this week. So you can kind of expand it to a larger actions of this day, this week, this month, but using present continuous indicates to the person you're talking to that this is a temporary action having significance only in this general time, not in general, like present simple. Another very important thing about present continuous is that we can actually use it to describe the future. And the rule is that we use it to describe a future that's near or 100% certain. To do that, we simply add a future word to the end of the sentence. So everything is in present continuous, and then we add the future word like tomorrow, like in 2 days or next week, indicating to the person we're talking to that this action is near or with 100% certainty is being planned. But that said, we don't actually have to use the future word every single time if we use the construction going to. So going to is talking about the future in present continuous without having to add a future word, such as we're going to do it or they aren't going to let this happen. Now, just saying that already means that we're talking about the future that's certain or near. A lot of English speakers use this construction, and in slang, it's often shortened to gonna. We're gonna do it. They aren't gonna let this happen. Now, past continuous, which I like to call a busy past, talks about longer actions that were happening at some point in the past. Very often we connect it with past simple, where past simple is one quick action and past continuous is longer action at the same time. So, for example, I was working for 4 hours. We use it when we want to tell a person how long the action was in the past. In state and action is was being, were being, and was plus ing. In negation, wasn't and weren't. And again, in questions, we reverse the order. So was he making a mistake or were they being unfocused? So very similar to present continuous, just the am, are, and is, we turn it into was and were. Now, we use past continuous for interrupted events, like I mentioned before. So I was talking for 5 minutes when he walked in. He walked in is a faster action. I was talking for 5 minutes is the longer action. We use it to describe past habits because they are longer actions happening in the past. So I was going to the gym for 4 months last year. Or, as in this example, she was often trying to impress her boss. That's trying to impress her boss is not a standard habit, but it's a repeated action that she was doing in the past. And we use it to explain how long something was happening. So the players were training all year for this match. I was trying to complete the final level for 4 hours. The length of time is important in this context. That's when we use it. Now, future continuous, very similar to past continuous, we use it to describe a longer action happening in the future. That's it. That's all we use it for. Yes, we can easily exchange it with future simple. Nothing is going to happen. If we want to add this extra level, extra layer of meaning into our sentence, that this will be happening longer, 4 hours, 8 hours, then we're going to use future continuous. Now, it doesn't actually divide into state and action. They look the same. We use will, we use be, and then we add ing to the verb. So I will be working for Google. In the negation, will turns into want. So I won't be eating meat. I won't be working for Google. Remember to also add how long. I don't have it in my examples, but it's quite important to add how long because that's why we use this tense. And in the question, reversed order, will he be making a mistake? Will I be working for Google for 4 hours? We use future continuous to specify a time, as in the museum will be hosting a special tour at 8 p.m. We are also indicating that the tour will take longer, or when we want to describe a longer action that will start and finish and last a long time in the future, as in, we will be watching horror movies from dusk until dawn. We use it to describe many events happening at the same time, as in, my brother will be babysitting when I'll be working, or I'll be playing basketball on Sunday and my partner will be playing tennis. We also use it to talk about interrupted events, just like in past continuous. So I will be taking a shower when the guests arrive. So those are interrupted events in the future. They haven't happened yet. We'll be getting up when the alarm rings. So that's how future continuous works. It's not a super popular tense to use, but it's quite useful to know its construction. So the continuouses. Past continuous, we use it when we want to describe how long the past events were. Present continuous, we use it to describe things happening at the moment right now, or to talk about certain things in the near future. And future continuous, we use it to talk about longer events in the future. In practice, present continuous in a state is you are being a cook now. So you aren't a cook, you are behaving like a cook. In action, you are cooking now. In the second way of using it, you are being a cook tomorrow, or you are cooking tomorrow. Past continuous in state is you were being a cook from 2018 to 2020. In action, you were cooking when he arrived. Future continuous in state and action, you will be cooking for 10 hours tomorrow. And that's how continuouses work. Now we move to the third category, everybody's favorite category, the perfect tenses. I know that a lot of people have problem understanding the perfect tenses. I can't blame you. They are quite complicated, but let me try to untangle them for you and actually make them very simple. So we'll start with everybody's favorite present perfect, which I like to call the tense of experiences. And on our timeline, it fits right here between today and June 2023. It fills that long gap. And that's because present perfect is not something that we use to describe one specific moment. Present perfect describes a long period of time, a period that started at some point and is still unfinished today. It's still going on today. It talks about long periods of time. So, for example, I have seen Interstellar 6 times. Absolutely love that film. And I know for a fact I'm going to watch it more times in the future. That's why this period of time of me watching Interstellar still is unfinished. It started when the film came out and it's still going on until the day I will watch it the last time. Present perfect uses verbs in their third form. So am is been, are is been, do is done, eat is eaten. I super recommend memorizing this whole table with the past versions of the verbs. It's very, very useful to know them all. I remember when I was learning English in high school, I put this table on my bedroom's door and I was looking at the verbs every single time I left my bedroom. And after 2 years, I had them all memorized. It's very useful to do that. The perfect tenses will all use this extra word which helps them with the structure. And that word is have. It's not have as the verb have to possess something. I have an apple. It's a word that is spelled the same way. It sounds the same way, but it's something completely different. It's so-called auxiliary word, which is just a fancy word for a supportive word or helping word. And this word helps build the perfect tenses. It's there to indicate that now we're using a perfect tense. So we put have between the subject, the person or the thing, and the verb that we're using. So example is, I have worked for Google. In a third person, he, she, and it, have turns into has. So he has worked for Google. Also very important is that we shorten have to the or ve. So I've worked for Google is what most English speakers will say. Again, just like with will and lille, if you start using have in a shorter form, you'll take your fluency to the next level. Very important, very useful. In negations, have turns into haven't, has into hasn't, and in questions, again, we have the reversed order. We start with have or with has. So, has he made a mistake, or have you been unfocused? Now, let me try to explain present perfect in even simpler way. Let's clear this timeline and have only one event, which is today, and something in the past in June 2023. Let's say that on that date, your son was born. So your son was born in June 2023. That's a one action that started and finished in the past. We know when, so we use past simple for that. But from that moment onward, a period of time started of you being a father to your son. So you have been a father to your son and you still are to this day. That's the present perfect period of time. Now, there are ways to talk about this period because sometimes when we talk to someone and we describe these periods, we want to let them know how long they are. And we have two ways of indicating the length of these periods. One way is to start at the beginning using the word since. So you have been a father since June 2023. So we describe the period of time by describing its origin. Or we can describe how long this period of time is using the word for. So you have been a father for 6 months. That's how we describe these periods of time. Now, present perfect, because it doesn't indicate a specific time, it's all of that time in this period, loves words that kind of tell the time, but they really don't. Words such as already, yet, just, never, ever, and so on. So these are like false words that they kind of estimate the time, but don't really tell you exactly when. So present perfect is used for periods of time which are still going on. It's also used for repeated actions, just like with my movie Interstellar. I've seen this movie 6 times. You've trained karate every Monday for 2 years. And we also use it for actions which were finished a moment ago. So, for example, I've just brushed my teeth, or we finished practice now, so let's go home. The word just is very useful in this example. Just means a moment ago. So that's present perfect. And with that explanation, I actually have good news for you. So far, we've covered 97% of language. That's right. 97% of language uses the last 7 tenses that we've discussed. To show you the statistics, these numbers are averages from multiple studies done on the English grammar. Present simple and past simple together create 77% of all English language that you'll come across. Adding future simple to it will add an extra 8.7%. Then present perfect, extra 6%, and present continuous, extra 5.1%. So that's 97% of all language is just these 5 tenses. If you master them, you really will be able to manage all of the situations. You'll be able to talk to native speakers, to business people, to professors, literally to anybody. Everything we're going to do from now on is the remaining 3%, and that's the remaining 7 tenses. What's good to note is that for common speech, the most important, as always, is present simple. Second most important is present continuous, then past simple, past continuous, future simple, and present perfect. Those 6 are incredibly important. Okay, so just for the fun of it, just for the sake of educational purposes, let's talk about the remaining 5 tenses, starting with past perfect, the pre-past. And again, clearing our timeline, we have today and June 2023. Again, your son was born in that month. But before this situation, there was a different situation. You drove your wife to the hospital before your son was born. Now, we have now 2 situations in the past. And past perfect exists for the purpose of telling which event was first and which event came second. So the first one was driving the wife to the hospital. So we use past perfect for that. Have turns into had, and we create a sentence, you had driven your wife to the hospital. However, past perfect can't really work on its own. It needs to be connected with a different tense because it tells the chronological order. So most often we combine it with past simple, creating one sentence using words before and after. So the perfect example would be, before your son was born, you had driven your wife to the hospital. Or reversing the order of those events, after you had driven your wife to the hospital, your son was born. We put it here in the timeline, and in state and action, it looks like present perfect, but instead of have, we have had, and we shorten this had to d very often. In the negation, had is hadn't, and questions we start with had. And that's it. That's the whole logic of past perfect. I know a lot of people stress about this one. It's really only used in books, especially in fiction, because all of the fiction, such as Harry Potter, is written in the past. So this one is used to kind of organize the events, organize the information, giving the giving the reader this extra level of understanding what came first. It's really very rarely used in common speech. No one really has time to think, is this a proper time to use it or not? And which event came first? We just use past simple for everything, really. Future perfect, even more redundant than past perfect. So now we have a situation in the future. Your son will be 4 years old in 2027. At the time when your son reaches his fourth birthday, you will also move to Germany. So now we have a period of time that will finish with an action set in the future. So that's what future perfect is. It exists to indicate deadlines or things that will be happening until a certain point. So your son will have been 4 years old by the time you will move to Germany. The 4 years old is the action, longer action. I know it sounds a bit complicated, and honestly, it blows my mind too. That's why hardly anybody ever uses that, because no one really has the mental space to really think about, oh, is it a proper way to use it right now or not? Also, to make things even simpler, is using just future simple doesn't change the intention or the meaning of the sentence. You can put the sentence together with just future simple and it will mean exactly the same thing. So your son will be 4 years old before you will move to Germany. Exactly the same meaning. Just as future continuous, it doesn't divide into a state and action. It's just one thing. So we add will before the word have. So I will have worked for Google by the time I am 27. In negation, will turns into won't, so won't have. And in a question, we start with will and we use have after the subject. So will he have made a mistake? And again, this one doesn't exist alone in a vacuum. It needs to be connected with something else. So those are the perfects. Past perfect, we use it to describe chronological events. Present perfect, we use it to describe a period of time. It doesn't have a specific time. And future perfect, we use it to describe what will happen when the future deadline is reached. In practice, it looks like this. Present perfect state, we've been good workers this year. Present perfect action, we've done many projects this year. Past perfect, first we have an action in the past, so we're fired. We'd been good workers before we got fired. And in action, we had done many projects before we got fired. In future, again, we have an event happening in the future. So again, we get fired. And the future perfect will be, we'll have finished many projects by the time we'll get fired. That's how we use the perfects. The last category, which are perfect continuous, are literally a combination of the perfects and the continuouses. And the logic actually is not that complicated. I'm going to describe them together because it's not necessary to really go deep into the details, especially if they're not really that often used. So present perfect continuous are ongoing periods of time. They start at some point in the past and they're still continuing today or right now. So I have been studying for 6 hours. When do we use them? We use them when we're talking to someone and we want to tell them, we want them to understand how long something has been going. So, for example, I'm in the library, I'm studying for the test. My friend comes, says, "How long have you been here?" And I'm saying, "I have been studying here for 6 hours," because I want to tell him how long. We haven't been working since May. Has he been playing chess his whole life? Is the question. So to sum up, we use present perfect continuous when the length of the period is as important as the action itself. Past perfect continuous is simply a longer action that took place before a different action. So I had been studying for 6 hours before I passed the test. We hadn't been working after the company went bankrupt. I'm looking at it now and I think I actually made a typo because the logic would be that we haven't been working because we're still not working now. I'm actually not sure. Please write down in the comment if this is correct or not. My brain is breaking now on trying to comprehend this logic. And in the question, had he been playing chess before he met his wife? In the future perfect continuous, it's a longer action that will take place before a future action. So I will have been studying for 6 hours by the time I'll take the test. In May 2024, we won't have been working for 6 hours. And in questions, will he have been playing chess every day by the time he'll win the tournament? That's a lot of words. I don't think I actually have ever heard a person use future perfect continuous when talking to me or in giving a lecture or anything like that. I've only seen this one in textbooks and on grammar lessons. I do not recommend using it. Not many people actually understand how it works. So chances are, if we use this structure, if we try to have our perfect grammar in all situations, we are just going to confuse the person we're speaking to. So it's not worth the hassle. I do not recommend it. That's it. That's all of our tenses. Here they fill the timeline. We've covered the simple tenses, we've covered the continuouses, we've covered the perfects, and we've covered the perfect continuouses. And we filled the entire timeline of time. This is how all the tenses connect and interact with each other. And this is the underlying logic behind all of them. If you want to learn more about me, please visit my website, my Instagram page, my TikTok, or if you're Polish, I recommend my book Droga do Płynności, which in a very simple way, in a very logical way, just like this video, talks about the English language and how one can learn the English language in a strategic step by step way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.